Hey everyone, my name's Julia, and this is the story of how my sister once called me useless in front of our whole family. And 5 years later, I stood before her again, but this time wearing a white coat she never saw coming. I always hated Christmas, not because I was some Grinch-hearted cynic. No, I hated it because it was the one time of year our family pretended to be whole. Mom would hang up plastic wreaths from Dollar Tree like they were heirlooms. Dad's old record player would still belt out Bing Crosby, even though he hadn't been with us for nearly a decade. The house always smelled like burnt cinnamon and subtle judgment. But that year, the decorations couldn't cover the cracks anymore. We gathered at Melissa's house, my older sister. She had the kind of home you see in real estate brochures: granite countertops, wine fridge, a centerpiece made entirely of white orchids and apparent self-worship. Her husband had left 6 months prior, but you wouldn't know it. She was dressed in a tailored red wrap dress, and her signature, "I've got it all together," smile. I came wearing jeans and a burgundy sweater I got secondhand. My contribution to the potluck was mashed potatoes, instant, over-salted. They sat untouched next to Melissa's honey-glazed ham and kale-wrapped quinoa bites. Dinner was fine until it wasn't. "So, Julia?" Melissa leaned back, her wine glass in one hand, judgment in the other. "Still doing, what is it again? Temp jobs? Waitressing?" A few chuckles fluttered across the table like moths to a flame. Aunt Cheryl looked away. Tommy, my younger brother, gave me a sympathetic glance, but said nothing. I held my fork tighter. "I'm working nights at the hospital, clinical support." Melissa's eyes widened in mock surprise. "Oh, you mean, like changing bedpans and handing out Jell-O?" She let out a laugh. "That's cute." The room didn't roar with laughter, but it didn't stop her either. "I mean, we all take different paths," she said with a shrug, sipping her wine. "Some of us succeed. Some of us survive." Her words hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just the insult. It was how easily she said it. Like this wasn't her first time rehearsing it in her head. Like every small failure I'd lived through was some secret currency she'd been saving for this exact moment. And worse, no one came to my defense. Mom stirred her peas. Uncle Ron cleared his throat. Even Tommy stared at his plate like it had something important to say. "Excuse me," I whispered, standing up. I walked out of the dining room without a word, my pulse pounding in my ears. I didn't even take my coat. The night was freezing, my breath visible, hands trembling from something deeper than cold. I made it to my car and collapsed inside, heart hammering. I pulled out my phone, ready to call someone, anyone, who would remind me I wasn't completely invisible. And that's when it buzzed. "Congratulations, Julia. You've been accepted into the surgical residency program at Riverton Medical. Orientation begins January 3rd. I stared at the message, blinking. I reread it. Then again. Riverton. One of the top 3 residency programs on the East Coast. Thousands applied. Less than 50 got in. I sat in that freezing car, half broken from my sister's words, holding a phone that told a different story entirely. They thought I was still a failure, but they didn't know I was already becoming something they'd never be able to insult again. "You sure you want this, Julia?" Dr. Grant had asked during my final nursing rotation. "Residency isn't glamorous. Long hours, bad coffee, worse pay." I'd smiled then, the kind of smile that knows exactly how much it costs to rebuild a life. "I don't need it to be glamorous. I need it to be mine." Back at the dinner table, Melissa was probably moving on to humble brag about her promotion, or pretending not to care that her husband took the dog in the divorce. But none of that mattered now, because for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel powerless. I felt ready. I don't remember the first time I realized I was the family scapegoat. That's the thing about growing up in the house. It doesn't hit you with force. It's a slow like only to discover it was holding the whole thing together. I used to think Melissa and I were close. We shared a bedroom for 14 years, wore each other's hand-me-downs, and swapped secrets under a shared blanket fort when storms shook the windows. She called me Jules, braided my hair on Sunday nights, and once told me she'd never let anyone hurt me. But that was before our dad died. He was the gravity in our home. Stern, fair, a little distant, but steady. When he passed, everything started to float. Rules, loyalties, love, drifting wherever Melissa pointed them. I was 16 when I took the fall for something I didn't do. Melissa had taken our mom's gold necklace, the one from Nana, the one she only wore to church or funerals. It was gone. I came home from school to see Mom's red face and Melissa crying on the couch. "She stole it," Melissa whispered. "I saw her take it. I didn't want to believe it." She couldn't even look me in the eye. I was stunned. "What are you talking about?" Mom didn't wait for answers. "Get to your room. I'll deal with you later." And she did. I was grounded for a month. My phone was taken. I missed the deadline for the debate tournament, which would have given me credit toward my college application. I cried, begged, explained, but it didn't matter. Mom believed Melissa. She always did. 3 weeks later, I found the necklace behind Melissa's dresser. No apology came, no acknowledgement. When I showed it to Mom, she said, "She probably put it back. At least she did the right thing." That was the first time I knew the truth. Melissa was not the person I thought she was, and neither was my mother. The next year was when it all fell apart. I'd worked hard, studied like hell, and was offered a conditional academic scholarship, pre-med. It was everything I'd dreamed of. I was going to leave that house, that weight, that hierarchy. I was going to start something of my own. Then the letter disappeared. I remember the day clearly, May 2nd. I was sitting on the porch when the mail came in. There was an envelope from Eastwell University with my name on it. I held it like it was gold, because to me, it was. I was shaking too hard to open it. I set it on the kitchen table while I grabbed my journal. 10 minutes. When I came back, it was gone. I searched the counters, the trash, even under the fridge. I asked Mom. "I haven't seen anything," she said, eyes glued to the TV. Melissa walked in with a popsicle, smiling. "Still waiting for those college dreams, Jules?" It was such an odd thing to say. Later that summer, Mom told me they decided to use the college savings for Melissa's internship program abroad, one she said could launch her career in marketing. I didn't fight. There wasn't enough air left in me to scream. Some nights, I still wonder how different things could have been if I'd spoken up. But even then, I knew the truth. If you're the daughter they don't believe in, your voice becomes background noise. I started working at a diner off Route 8. Tips weren't great, but the late shifts kept me away from home. I memorized the regulars' orders, smiled at drunk men twice my age, and pocketed just enough to pay for community college credits, one class at a time. That's where I met Luis. He was doing night rotations at the local urgent care, on his way to becoming a nurse. He had kind eyes, smelled like eucalyptus, and listened when I spoke. Really listened. "You're smart as hell," he said once, after I corrected the nurse's medication dose. "Why aren't you in med school?" I laughed. It wasn't even bitter. It was just defeated. "Because I'm invisible," I said. One rainy night, I came home to find Mom at the kitchen table, Melissa pacing behind her, arms crossed. "We need to talk," Mom said. Melissa had gotten into a PR grad program. Expensive, prestigious, all the buzzwords. But they were short on money, and the only way to afford the deposit was to cash out what little savings were left from my dad's account. The one he'd said was for his girls' futures. But they meant hers, not mine. I was barely breathing. "You're not even in school right now," Melissa said sharply. "It's not like you're using it." "I'm taking 2 classes," I murmured. Melissa laughed. "Community college isn't school, Julia. It's a holding pen." Mom didn't flinch. "Let's just get through this without drama," she sighed. "I didn't sign the release papers, so they forged my name. I found out months later, when the bank called to confirm the withdrawal. That was the moment, the one that burned hot enough to cauterize everything that came before. I didn't yell. I didn't throw plates or call the cops. I just walked to my room, packed 3 bags, and left without saying a word. I moved into a rented room above a mechanic's garage, picked up double shifts, and registered for online pre-med courses with what money I had left. I stopped waiting for people to save me. I started building something no one could take. There's a certain silence that comes with betrayal, not the kind that crashes through rooms and leaves behind slammed doors. No, this one is quieter. It seeps into the floorboards and stains the air. You start to question whether it really happened, or if maybe, just maybe, you misunderstood everything. That's how I felt for years. Until I found the envelope. It was late September, and the nights were getting colder. I was helping Mom clear out the attic, a passive-aggressive peace offering after not speaking for almost 6 months. She said she was finally ready to let go of some of Dad's old stuff. I didn't ask why. I assumed the money had run dry again. We were sorting boxes labeled memories, photos, and the cryptic stuff. That one caught my eye. Inside, buried between a busted clock radio and an old tennis trophy of Melissa's, was a shoebox. The lid was duct-taped. I peeled it open out of boredom more than curiosity. And there it was. An envelope, tattered at the edges, torn open but still mostly intact. My name was typed on the front, Julia V. Hendricks. Return address, Eastwell University, Office of Admissions. My hands shook. I knew that envelope. Or at least, I should have. The air in the attic thickened as I pulled out the folded papers. The Eastwell seal glinted faintly in the dusty light. It was the original scholarship award letter. Full tuition, pre-med program, housing included. Award date, May 1st. 2 days before the day I last saw that envelope on the kitchen table. Inside the flap was a sticky note. It read, in a handwriting I knew too well. Not for her. She'll waste it. I dropped the letter. Literally dropped it. My knees buckled like something invisible just cracked through my spine. My mother turned from across the attic, holding some photo albums. "What is it?" she asked, noticing the color drain from my face. I held the note up, barely able to speak. "Did you know about this?" She walked over, her expression unreadable. She looked down at the letter, then at me. Something passed through her face. Guilt, maybe, or just the inconvenience of being caught. "I thought you saw it. You let her take this from me." "I didn't know what was in the envelope," she said flatly, as if that somehow erased the damage. "Melissa told me she'd handle it." "You let her decide my future?" My voice cracked. "You believed her again." Mom pressed her lips together. "She was the one with a plan." The words landed like bricks. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But I walked out of that attic with the letter clutched in my hand, like a crime scene photo. The missing piece of a puzzle I hadn't even realized I'd been building. It wasn't just favoritism. It wasn't even just sabotage. Melissa had stolen my life, and my mother helped her do it. The next night, I sat on my bed staring at the letter. I could feel it, a tightness in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. Not since the night I left home. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was rage. A cold, intelligent rage. The kind that doesn't lash out. It calculates. I drafted an email to Melissa. Subject, found something. Attached. A photo of the letter and the sticky note. No message, no context, just the image. Within 30 minutes, she called. I didn't answer. She called again. And again. Left voicemails full of panic, not apology. She never said sorry, just, "Julia, this is getting blown out of proportion. That was a long time ago. You've done well for yourself now, right? So what does it matter?" I had to protect the family. You wouldn't have made it anyway. That last one hit hardest. It wasn't just a lie. It was her truth. I recorded all of it, not to expose her, not yet. I wasn't looking for revenge in the traditional sense. I just wanted her to know that I loved her more, to know I had power to stay, and that she couldn't carry this alone. Later that week, I went to visit Luis. He was now a full-time nurse at St. Mary's, the same hospital I'd soon begin my residency at. We grabbed coffee during his break. "Are you okay?" he asked. I showed him a photo of the letter. He read it, his jaw tightening. "You could ruin her with this." "Yeah," I said quietly, "but I don't want to ruin her." "Then what do you want?" I didn't answer right away, because honestly, I wasn't sure. Forgiveness felt too generous, revenge felt too small. "I want her to know," I said at last, "that I remember everything she did. And this time, I won't pretend I'm okay with it." I put the letter in a clear file sleeve, slid it into a binder, stored it on my shelf. Not for vengeance, for proof. Because when the time came, and it would come, I'd need no speech, no confrontation, just this. Something undeniable. That it storms into rooms, slamming doors, and yelling truths like a bad soap opera. But real revenge, the kind that changes the air in a room when you enter it, is quiet. It builds in silence. It watches. It waits. That's what I was doing now. I moved into a small studio above an old bakery in West Elm. The floors creaked with every step, and the bathroom faucet squealed like a dying cat. But it was mine. I worked 12-hour shifts at the hospital, 5 days a week. The money barely covered rent and ramen, but I found a rhythm. I'd show up at 5 a.m., assist in patient intake, clean wounds, file reports. Then I'd head home, change into sweats, and open my laptop for online lectures. Anatomy, chemistry, clinical reasoning. On weekends, I worked the ER floor. I saw everything from broken arms to gunshot wounds. It was chaos, and somehow it made sense. Pain, when it's physical, is easier to manage. Dr. Tran, the lead resident, took notice. "You've got hands that learn faster than most," she told me during a code blue drill. "You think in sequences. That's rare." It was the first compliment I'd received in months that didn't feel pity-coded. One night, after rounds, she caught me reading a textbook in the break room. "You prepping for MCATs?" she asked. I nodded. "I take them in 6 weeks." She studied me for a moment, then said, "If you don't apply to Riverton, you're wasting something dangerous." I blinked. "Dangerous?"
Ready?
She smiled. "Potential. In the wrong hands, it burns out. In the right ones, it becomes fire." I carried her words with me like armor. Meanwhile, I didn't hear from Melissa. Not since the letter. But I kept tabs. Quiet ones. Through mutuals, I learned her perfect facade had started to slip. Her husband had officially filed for divorce. Her PR firm lost a major client. I stumbled on an article where she'd been accused of manipulating social media data for a campaign. No charges, just whispers. One night, Luis forwarded me a video from a fundraiser she hosted. "She's still playing America's sweetheart," he texted. I watched it. Melissa stood on stage, mic in hand, talking about empowering young women from underprivileged backgrounds and mentoring girls who didn't have support growing up. I almost laughed. The gall of her to speak about struggle like it was some accessory she picked up on sale. But I didn't call her out. I didn't comment or share the video. I just saved it, because I wasn't finished becoming yet. MCAT day came. I took a deep breath outside the testing center, gripping my pencils like they were lifelines. I'd studied for this moment for over a year, in cafes, on bus rides, in between blood draws and sutures. 4 hours later, I walked out numb, my brain fried. Luis was waiting in the parking lot with 2 coffees and a bag of Doritos. "That bad?" he asked. "I forgot my middle name halfway through," I muttered. He handed me the coffee. "Then you probably crushed it." Weeks passed. Every day was a grind. Rounds, night shifts, study, crash, repeat. I slept in 2-hour pockets and learned how to function on caffeine and spite. Then came the email. Subject: "Congratulations, Riverton acceptance. I opened it, read it once, then again, then I cried. Not the noisy, dramatic kind, just quiet tears that leaked out as my chest finally unclenched. I was in full residency, one of the top hospitals in the country. I called Luis. He screamed into the phone so loud I almost dropped it. I told you! I told you! You did, I whispered. You know what this means, right? He said. I don't have to mop blood anymore. That. And you're not her anymore. You're not their Julia. You're yours now. And for the first time, I believed that. A few months later, I moved into a modest apartment near the hospital. Clean white walls, a tiny balcony, no ghosts. The day before my orientation, I passed a three-story cemetery. In the window was a lab coat, white, crisp, the blanket couch. I walked in and that night, I ironed it, sewed on my knees and stayed stitches. Dr. Julia Hendricks. Then, it started on the page. Code Gray. Emergency trauma. ER Bay 3. I was halfway through reviewing a patient chart when the call came in. The air inside Riverton always carried this electric tension, like something urgent was always one step away. I'd learned how to stay calm, how to keep my breathing steady, even when someone's life was unspooling right in front of me. But this time, when I walked through the automatic doors, it wasn't the blood on the gurney that stopped me. It was the voice. Get him help, please. He's my brother. I froze. My heart didn't pound. It just paused. Melissa. Her hair was pulled back into a messy twist, a smudge of mascara under one eye, her blazer stained with something dark. Panic lived in the corners of her voice. She was holding the hand of a young man lying on the stretcher. Tommy. A nurse turned to me. Dr. Hendricks, you're up. You'll be leading this case. The room dropped into slow motion. Melissa looked up. She saw me. Her face did something between confusion and horror. Like she'd glimpsed a ghost she thought she'd buried in her backyard years ago. I didn't blink. I didn't smile. I stepped forward and spoke calmly. Let's move him to Trauma Bay 1. We'll need a CT, blood work, and vitals on repeat. Now. I didn't even look at her again. She stepped back, stunned into silence. Tommy was unconscious. I moved beside the trauma team, slipped gloves on, and focused on what I could control. This was my arena now, not hers. After we stabilized Tommy and the rush settled into its normal post-chaos rhythm, I scrubbed out, washed my hands, and checked the monitor. Stable. Minor internal bleeding. Possible concussion. Nothing life-threatening. A resident tapped my shoulder. There's a woman in the waiting area demanding to speak with you. Of course there was. I walked slowly, deliberately, down the hallway. Melissa stood by the vending machines, arms crossed, pacing like a tiger that had finally found its cage. When she saw me, she actually flinched. Julia, I didn't know you were… Here? I filled in. Her voice dropped. Chief? I didn't answer. She blinked a few times, like if she did it enough, maybe I'd shift back into the version of me she was used to controlling. What happened to Tommy? She asked. He'll be okay. Thank God. She exhaled, then shifted. I can't believe this hospital. You're… Qualified? I said, calm. That's not what I meant. No, I said, but it's what you always meant. She tried to laugh. It didn't come out right. I guess I deserve that. I didn't nod, because this wasn't about deserved anymore. It was about recognition and silence. And every moment I'd been told I wasn't enough, standing here now wearing a title she used to mock. Do you want to see him? I asked. She looked at me with something new in her face. Not superiority, not pity, fear. Julia, she started, voice soft. I know I've done things I can't take back. I didn't interrupt. She continued. I was young. We were both kids. I didn't mean to destroy you. I wasn't destroyed, I said. I was delayed. That landed. She swallowed hard. I kept the letter, I said. The scholarship one. Her face paled. I figured you might need to remember what power used to feel like, so you can feel the difference now. Melissa didn't answer. I took a breath. This conversation is over. You're not the story anymore. I turned and walked away. She didn't follow. Later that night, I sat beside Tommy's hospital bed. He was still sedated. Machines beeped steadily. His hand was warm in mine. He stirred. His eyes blinked open slowly. Julia? I smiled. Hey, you're safe. You're a doctor? He didn't say it like it was impossible. He said it like he always knew I could be, but no one ever let him say it out loud. Yeah, I said, and you're gonna be fine. He squeezed my hand. I always thought you'd be something big. Tears stung behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Rest now, I whispered. Outside the room, I stood in the hallway. For years, I had imagined this moment as a scene where I would scream, or explode, or make her pay in front of everyone, but none of that had happened. And yet, somehow, I had won. Without raising my voice, without raising a fist, I had become undeniable. Power doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes, it looks like quiet knowledge, a truth held like a blade just beneath your sleeve. You don't need to swing it. Just let them know it's there. I hadn't seen Melissa since the hospital, not face to face, but she'd texted me, called, even emailed, each message more desperate than the last. I didn't know how to fix it, Julia. I panicked. Please don't do anything stupid. We're family. You don't understand what it's like, being the one everyone expects everything from. I didn't answer. She wasn't used to being ignored. Which is why, when I showed up to her office unannounced 2 weeks later, she nearly knocked over her overpriced candle trying to stand. Julia, she started. Relax. I'm not here to fight. Her office smelled like vanilla-laced ambition, crisp lines, gold accents, a framed award on every wall. One photo of us as kids sat on the shelf behind her desk. I hadn't seen that picture in over a decade. I wasn't sure you'd ever come here, she said, eyes wary. I wasn't sure either. I sat down without being invited. She followed. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything, just sat in the quiet tension of people who shared a history too jagged to reminisce about. I want to show you something, I said. I pulled out my phone and opened the email folder titled Melissa PR Campaign. Photos, screenshots, a video from her mentorship brunch 6 months ago. In it, she shared a story about helping a young girl from the inner city pursue her dream of becoming a nurse. She used an old photo of me, taken during one of my overnight shifts at the free clinic years ago, spliced with background music and a voiceover. She didn't have a voice, Melissa said in the video, so I gave her one. I paused the clip and placed my phone on her desk. You took my story, I said, and turned it into a branding tool. Melissa blinked. I didn't name you. No, you used me. Her mouth opened, closed. She leaned back, hands resting flat on her desk. That photo was from your public profile, she said carefully. You posted it. To inspire, not to be claimed. She exhaled, then shifted tactics. Do you want me to take it down? Is that what this is about? This is about you thinking you can steal everything, that because you succeed, the means don't matter. She looked at me now, not like a sister, but like someone calculating how much damage I could do. I could send this to every sponsor you've ever worked with, I said quietly. I could let the internet tear into the falsehood you've been feeding them. It wouldn't take long. Her voice cracked slightly. Julia, please? But I won't, I said. That caught her off guard. She waited, confused. Why? I leaned forward. Because I don't need to ruin you to prove I'm better. You've done that work for me. Her face shifted. Panic, then guilt, then something I hadn't seen from her in years. Shame. You can keep your awards, your candles, your mentorship programs, I added. Just remember who you really took that story from. I stood up. Her eyes didn't follow me. She stared at the paused video on my phone, frozen on the image of me, exhausted but smiling, in scrubs with a patient in the background. "I never thought you'd go this far," she said, voice barely audible. I paused at the door. "I never thought you'd go that low." And then I left. That night, I went home and deleted the email folder. Not because she didn't deserve exposure, but because some victories don't need an audience. They only need memory. A week later, Tommy called. "Mom wants to have dinner," he said. I sighed. "Just us three. No speeches, no guilt." I agreed. We met at a small place off Hamilton, quiet, dim lights, soft jazz in the background. My mother didn't say much when she saw me, just a tight smile and a nod. "I heard about the promotion," she said after we ordered. "Chief resident. That's big." "It is." She stirred her iced tea. "I didn't think you'd still talk to me." "I didn't come to talk. I came to eat." Tommy chuckled. We ordered, talked about meaningless things, weather, sports, nothing about the past. But as dessert came, my mother reached into her purse and pulled out a photo. It was from my high school graduation, one I'd never seen. In it, I was standing alone, holding my diploma. Off to the side, listening and clapping, but not looking at me. "I found this last week," she said. "I'm sorry I didn't give it to you." I looked at it. It didn't hurt like I thought it would. It just made sense. "I don't want an apology," I said. She nodded. "I just want you to remember what you chose." She blinked quickly, but didn't cry. And that, somehow, made it more real. The first time I was asked to speak publicly about my journey, I almost said no. Not because I was scared, but because I wasn't sure the story belonged to me anymore. It had been pulled apart so many times, rewritten by others, twisted into false narratives and family myths. I'd spent years cleaning up the mess of who they said I was. And now, someone wanted me to stand behind a microphone and tell the truth? It felt foreign. But Dr. Tran insisted, "You've earned your place. Use it." It was the annual Women in Medicine Gala. Not just any event, but one of the most prestigious national gatherings for female leaders in healthcare. Surgeons, researchers, policymakers. The kind of people who once seemed galaxies away from where I'd started. Now I was the closing speaker. A headline on the program in crisp serif font. Dr. Julia Hendricks. Keynote, What They Couldn't Take. The ballroom at the Hyatt shimmered with low chandeliers and the soft hum of violin. Table after table filled with strangers in gowns and suits, sipping sparkling water and Pinot Noir. I stood backstage, palms cold, heart calm. Louis sat in the third row. He gave me a small nod when our eyes met. Tommy was beside him. And at the very back of the room, barely visible, stood my mother. Alone. She wasn't on the guest list. I didn't invite her. But I didn't stop her from coming either. When the MC called my name, I stepped out. The room quieted. I adjusted the mic, took a slow breath, and began. I was once told I was useless. Soft stirrings in the crowd, people leaned in. It wasn't by a stranger. It wasn't even subtle. It was spoken at a dinner table, under chandelier light, and a perfectly glazed ham. A faint chuckle rippled from a corner. But what hurt most wasn't the word itself. It was the silence that followed it. The people who didn't defend me, the people who agreed quietly, the people who pretended I didn't hear what I heard. I paused. I spent years trying to outgrow that word, until I realized it wasn't about disproving them. It was about remembering who I had always been. More silence. This one deeper. I didn't get here through perfect grades or perfect paths. I took night shifts. I studied in basements and break rooms. I failed things. I started over. I showed up when no one expected me to. And I kept going, even when it felt pointless. I looked around the room. Dozens of women, some young, some gray-haired, some wiping at their eyes. I didn't come here to speak about revenge. I'm not here to tell you I triumphed. I'm here because I'm still standing. Because I chose to keep becoming, even when they tried to shrink me. A beat of silence. Sometimes, the biggest revenge is outgrowing the need for it. Applause began softly, then swelled. I didn't smile. Not in triumph, just quietly, present. After the speech, I stood near the back hallway, greeting a few attendees. Compliments, thank yous, hugs. One young med student whispered, "That saved me." I hugged her back. Luis came over, eyes bright. "You just tore the house down." I didn't even raise my voice. "Exactly," he said, grinning. "That's what made it hit harder." Then Tommy stepped forward. He didn't say anything at first, just pulled me into a hug. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. "Thanks, kid." And then I felt it, a presence, behind me. I turned. My mother stood in the shadows of a column, half lit by the golden sconce above. Her hands were clasped in front of her. She looked, not remorseful, but small. Human. She didn't walk toward me, didn't make a scene, just nodded. I nodded back. That was it. No words, just recognition. Later that night, back in my apartment, I sat on the balcony with my shoes off, sipping cold tea. I didn't replay the speech. I didn't post it on social media. I just let the quiet in. Not empty, not sad. Just finally, mine. There's something strange about quiet. Not the kind that follows tragedy. The hollow, suffocating silence of loss. No. This was something else. This was peace. It had taken years to feel it. Not because I couldn't forgive them, but because I finally stopped needing to. 3 weeks after the gala, I got an invitation from a podcast I'd never heard of. A small show, independent, run by a woman named Erica. The subject line read, "For those useless, would you tell your story?" I hesitated. I didn't want another spotlight. I wasn't promoting a book. I wasn't trying to go viral. The subject line phrase in here, "For those useless." It was honest. It wasn't about branding. It was about the people still stuck in kitchens where no one hears them. So I said yes. We recorded the episode in a small sound booth above a bookstore in a sleepy downtown district. Erica was warm, sharp-eyed. She didn't interrupt, didn't push, just asked the kind of questions that made the air go still. "When did you first realize your story had value?" I thought about it. When I stopped trying to make it look good. We talked about medicine, about growing up in a house where silence was currency, about how being underestimated can shape you or destroy you. "Did you ever want revenge?" she asked. I laughed. Of course. I imagined all kinds of things. Screaming matches, public shaming, a courtroom speech even. What changed? I paused. I realized the loudest thing I could do was live well without their permission. When the episode aired, I didn't expect much. But my inbox lit up. Not with strangers asking for advice, but with confessions. One girl said she'd dropped out of nursing school because her sister told her she'd never be smart enough. Another woman wrote, "My mom gave my brother everything. I got silence." A man from Utah wrote, "They called me lazy. I was depressed. I never said a word, until now." I didn't respond to them all. I didn't need to. Just knowing they existed, that they were listening, was enough. One morning, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email, a real letter, handwritten. The return address was blank. Inside was a photo, me and Melissa, young, maybe 9 and 11, standing outside a school science fair. I had a ribbon in my hand. She was next to me, looking annoyed. On the back, in familiar handwriting, I told them I did that project. You didn't argue. I don't know why you didn't fight me, but I wish you had. No name, no apology, just that. I sat with it for a while. I didn't feel anger, just an echo of something old. Then I put it in a drawer. Some stories don't need rewriting. They just need to be put away. I kept working, not for titles or accolades, but because it was finally mine. My story, my pace. I started mentoring students from underserved schools, not for a nonprofit, just because. Every now and then, someone would ask me to tell my story. I always said the same thing. It's not about how far you rise, it's about who you become when no one's clapping. On the anniversary of my father's death, I visited his grave alone. I brought coffee, sat cross-legged beside the stone. "Hey, Dad." The wind stirred. "I did it. You were right. I had something." I paused. "But you were wrong too. I didn't need anyone to see it." I sipped the coffee, stared at the sky. I just needed to stop asking for permission. People often ask me what I would say to someone going through what I did. My answer's simple. You don't owe them your anger. You owe yourself your life. Sometimes the greatest act of strength isn't shouting back. It's walking forward. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Your worth isn't measured by who recognizes it. It's measured by how you choose to show up when no one's watching. I spent years trying to be heard in rooms that were never meant to hold me. The day I stopped knocking on those doors was the day I built my own. What about you? Have you ever been silenced by your own family? Told you weren't enough? I'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comments, or just type 1 if you've ever felt unseen. Let's remind each other that we're not alone. If this video spoke to something deep in you, drop a comment, let me know where you're watching from, or what part hit hardest. And hey, if you'd like to hear more stories that resonate with the real stuff, we're talking heart, grit, and healing, make sure to subscribe. Your voice matters here.